I never thought I'd be recording this from a hospital room after 20 years as a respected contractor in our town. My wife, Olivia, 8 months pregnant with our little girl, lies here connected to monitors while I replay the security footage of yesterday's nightmare. Our HOA president, Constance Albright, deliberately hitting Olivia with her black Lexus SUV, driving away, then smiling as she told police my wife was faking everything. The doctors say Olivia will recover, but those moments when I didn't know if our baby would survive, they change a man. I've built homes for dozens of families over the years, but nothing prepares you for watching someone threaten your own. What happens when the person who's supposed to protect your neighborhood becomes the predator? And how could I have known my decision to install security cameras last month would save my family's future? After finally saving enough, Olivia and I bought our dream home in Oakwood Estates 3 months ago. At 45, this is my second chance at family life after losing my first wife to cancer years ago. Olivia is younger, just 32, and we've been trying for this baby since the day we got married 3 years ago. Constance Albright, 58, had been HOA president for 12 years. A reign that began with smiles, but quickly revealed her true nature. She welcomed us with a gift basket and HOA rulebook that was thicker than the Bible. Just a formality, she said, but her eyes scanned our moving truck like we might be smuggling contraband. The first few weeks were fine. We repainted the exterior exactly the approved shade of greenwood beige. We kept our lawn at precisely 2.5 inches. We even sought approval before planting a single rose bush. Everything changed when we requested permission for a temporary wheelchair ramp for Olivia's Vietnam veteran father, who visits weekly. His leg was damaged in combat, and at 75, stairs are nearly impossible for him. It would disrupt the architectural continuity of the neighborhood, Constance said, standing on our porch with that clipboard she always carries. Perhaps he could visit less frequently. Olivia was devastated. Her father had just started cancer treatments, and those weekend visits meant everything to him. I suggested we appeal to the HOA board directly. And that's when Constance's mask slipped completely. She began a campaign of intimidation, daily inspections, accusations about our American flag display being too prominent, and threatening letters about our garden. Our garbage cans were suddenly visible from the street, even when tucked behind the fence. Our mailbox was non-conforming, despite being identical to others on the block. The neighbors started warning us privately. Arthur Jensen, across the street, pulled me aside while I was checking the mail. Don't challenge Constance. The last family who did found their car windows smashed. No witnesses, of course. Eleanor Thompson told Olivia at the community pool, Constance had my husband's work truck towed while he was on call for the hospital. Said commercial vehicles weren't allowed overnight, even though 3 other doctors parked their branded cars here. We tried to keep the peace, but with Olivia's pregnancy advancing and her father's condition worsening, the wheelchair ramp became non-negotiable. I submitted architectural plans showing it would be temporary, matching our house paint exactly. Constance rejected it within hours, without even consulting the board. This isn't going to end well, Olivia said that night. I just feel like she's watching us constantly. She wasn't wrong. I started noticing Constance's black Lexus SUV driving past our house several times daily, slowing down each time. Once, I caught her photographing our yard from the street. When I approached, she sped away. Yesterday, at 2:15 p.m., the sky was clear, temperature in the mid-70s. Perfect weather for Olivia to finally plant those approved flowers along our front walkway. Her doctor had encouraged light activity, saying it was good for her and the baby. I'd installed the security cameras the weekend before, after finding our garden hose slashed. Just a precaution, I told Olivia. The footage shows everything in perfect detail. Olivia was kneeling at the edge of our lawn, wearing her gray maternity shirt and torn jeans, exactly as you see in that image. She had her gardening gloves on, trowel in hand, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked so peaceful, humming to herself as she worked. At 2:17 p.m., Constance's black Lexus SUV appears at the top of the frame, approaching from the north side of our street. She's driving slowly, around 15 miles per hour, according to police analysis, which is normal for our residential area. But as she nears our property, something changes. The SUV visibly swerves toward the curb where Olivia is working. There's no obstruction in the road. No reason for this movement. The front right bumper strikes Olivia's left side, sending her sprawling onto the sidewalk. Her gardening trowel flies one direction, her shoe another. The impact is forceful enough that Olivia rolls completely over, ending up on her side, clutching her stomach exactly as shown in the image. The SUV never slows down. In fact, the footage clearly shows it accelerating away from the scene. No brake lights, no hesitation, just a deliberate hit and run, captured in 1080p from our doorbell camera. For 3 agonizing minutes, my pregnant wife lay there on the concrete. One shoe missing. Dirt from the flower bed smeared across her clothes. She tried to reach for her phone, which had fallen from her pocket, but couldn't quite grasp it. Later, she told me she was terrified that something was wrong with the baby because she could feel cramping starting almost immediately. At 2:20 p.m., our 72-year-old neighbor, Charles Collins, appears in the frame. He was walking his dog when he spotted Olivia. The footage shows him rushing to her side, his old flip phone already at his ear as he calls 911. His golden retriever stands guard, barking at passing cars. I was finishing a bathroom remodel across town when my phone rang. Charles's voice was shaking. "Jim, it's Olivia. Someone hit her with their car. The ambulance is coming. You need to get to County General right away." The 20-minute drive to the hospital was the longest of my life. Longer than the drive to my first wife's funeral, longer than the wait outside the room when Olivia had her miscarriage last year. Every red light felt like an eternity as my mind raced through worst-case scenarios. I called Olivia's phone repeatedly. No answer. County General's emergency entrance was chaos as usual. 2 ambulances unloading. Families crowded near the entrance. A security guard trying to maintain order. I parked illegally, left my keys in the ignition, and ran inside. My wife, Olivia Richardson, she was hit by a car, I told the triage nurse, my voice breaking. She's 8 months pregnant. They directed me to labor and delivery's emergency section on the 3rd floor. Olivia was already surrounded by medical staff, an OB/GYN, 2 nurses, and an ultrasound technician. She looked so small on that hospital bed, monitors beeping and IVs in her arm. When she saw me, she burst into tears. "Jim," she hit me. Constance hit me with her car and drove away, she managed between sobs. The baby. I felt contractions starting. Dr. Anil Patel, Olivia's obstetrician, pulled me aside. "Mr. Richardson, your wife has suffered contusions to her left side, a sprained wrist, and some abrasions. Our primary concern is fetal distress. We're monitoring some concerning decelerations in the baby's heart rate and early contractions. We've administered medication to stop the contractions, but we need to watch them both carefully for the next 24 hours. I stood there, trying to process his words while watching the ultrasound screen where my daughter's tiny heart was visible, beating too fast, then too slow. The bruising on Olivia's side was already darkening to an angry purple, visible below the edge of her hospital gown. "Someone did this deliberately?" Dr. Patel asked quietly. "Our HOA president," I said, the words feeling surreal as they left my mouth. "We have it on video." He shook his head. "The police are waiting to speak with you both when Olivia feels up to it." 2 officers arrived within minutes. Officer Maria Martinez, a younger woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, and Sergeant Thomas Benson, an older man with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes. They took initial statements. Olivia's voice trembling as she recounted how Constance's SUV had swerved toward her. I saw her face through the windshield, Olivia told them. She was looking right at me. She didn't even try to stop. I was about to pull up the security footage on my phone when the hospital room door swung open without a knock. Constance Albright stood in the doorway, designer purse swinging from her arm, that practiced concern expression I'd recognize anywhere after decades dealing with fake clients. I came as soon as I heard, she announced, as though she'd been invited. The whole neighborhood is talking about Olivia's accident. The officers turned, clearly surprised by her entrance. Olivia's heart rate monitor began beeping faster. Mrs. Albright, Sergeant Benson said. You're the president of Greenwood Estates HOA. Yes, and I've been so worried about the Richardsons, Constance replied, her voice dripping with fake concern. They're new to our community, and when I heard Olivia had fallen, I just had to check on her. Fallen? Olivia whispered, her face paling further. What happened next made my blood boil. Constance stepped fully into the room, her eyes darting between the officers before settling on Olivia with a look that might appear sympathetic to anyone who didn't know better. Officers, I think there's been a misunderstanding, Constance began, her voice controlled and reasonable. I was driving down Greenwood Lane this afternoon, completely normally, when I noticed in my rearview mirror that Olivia seemed to have tripped and fallen while gardening. She gestured toward Olivia's pregnant belly with a slight smile. With her condition, balance issues are common. I would have stopped, but I was already late for an important meeting with the county zoning board. I planned to check on her when I returned. My hands clenched into fists. You're saying you saw my wife fall and just drove away? Constance's eyes narrowed slightly, but her smile never faltered. Jim, I think Olivia is confused about what happened. Pregnancy can cause all sorts of confusion and even hallucinations sometimes. Officer Martinez's pen stopped moving across her notepad. Ma'am, are you suggesting Mrs. Richardson is fabricating being hit by a vehicle? I'm not suggesting anything, Constance replied smoothly. I'm stating facts. Olivia wasn't hit by any car, certainly not mine. She's thrown herself at the vehicle to cause trouble because they've been angry since I enforced community standards. She turned to Sergeant Benson, lowering her voice conspiratorially. The Richardsons have been disgruntled ever since I denied their request to build an unauthorized garage extension. It violated multiple HOA covenants. That's a complete fabrication, I interrupted. We never requested any garage extension. Constance continued as if I hadn't spoken. I've had to issue them 3 compliance notices in as many months. I hate to say it, but some people move to regulated communities and then resent the very rules that maintain our property values. Then came that smile. Not a normal smile, but the smirk of someone who's never faced consequences. She actually walked closer to Olivia's bed, looking down at her with mock sympathy. She's obviously faking to get attention, Constance said, gesturing dismissively at my wife hooked to monitors. Look at her, a little dirt from falling and suddenly hit and run. Please. The monitor tracking our baby's heart rate began beeping more rapidly. Olivia's face flushed with anger and fear as she tried to sit up. Dr. Patel moved quickly to check the readings. Sergeant Benson cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Richardson claims you deliberately swerved your vehicle toward her. That's a serious accusation. Absolutely ridiculous, Constance scoffed. I drive a $75,000 luxury SUV. Why would I risk damaging it to hit someone? It's my word against hers. And I've been a respected community leader for 12 years. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions uncertain. This was exactly what Constance wanted, to create doubt, to make it a he said, she said situation. I'd seen her do this before at HOA meetings, twisting facts until even witnesses began questioning their own memories. I reached for my phone, my hand surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. Actually, I said quietly, it's your word against this. I turned the screen toward them, showing the security app's interface with yesterday's date selected. The hospital room fell silent except for the steady beeping of Olivia's monitors. Constance's practiced smile froze on her face as I tapped the play button on my phone. The footage was crystal clear in brutal high definition. Officer Martinez moved closer, her professional demeanor slipping slightly as she watched Constance's black Lexus SUV approach our house, visibly swerve toward Olivia kneeling at the curb, strike her with enough force to send her sprawling, and then accelerate away without hesitation. I played it again, this time zooming in to show Constance's face, clearly visible through the windshield, her eyes locked on Olivia, her hands deliberately turning the steering wheel toward my wife. "As you can see," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "This wasn't an accident, and she definitely didn't fall gardening." Sergeant Benson's expression hardened as he turned to Constance. "Mrs. Albright, would you like to revise your statement?" Constance's face transformed from smug certainty to panic in seconds. The color drained from her cheeks, and for the first time since I'd known her, she seemed at a loss for words. "I didn't. That's not. You can't possibly," she stammered, backing away from the officers. "I didn't feel anything. There was no impact. I would have stopped if I'd hit someone." "The footage clearly shows otherwise," Officer Martinez said, her voice now cold. "Your vehicle deliberately changed course to strike Mrs. Richardson." "This is doctored footage," Constance suddenly blurted, pointing an accusing finger at me. "He works in construction. He probably knows someone who helped him fake this. I would never hurt a pregnant woman." I calmly opened the metadata details on the video. The timestamp matches exactly with the 911 call Charles Collins placed. "The angle is clear, and your license plate is perfectly visible. Illinois plate KRN 1958 on a 2023 black Lexus RX 350. Constance's designer purse slipped from her arm, hitting the linoleum floor with a thud. "This is absurd. I'm being framed. You can't possibly believe." Sergeant Benson's phone rang, interrupting her. He stepped to the corner of the room, speaking in low tones before returning with an expression that suggested the conversation had been significant. "Mrs. Albright, one of your neighbors, the Moretts at 1542 Greenwood Lane, have just provided us with footage from their doorbell camera. It shows the incident from a different angle, confirming Mr. Richardson's video." The last remnants of Constance's composure crumbled. "I want my lawyer," she whispered, suddenly looking much older than her 58 years. "That's your right," Officer Martinez said, reaching for her handcuffs. "Constance Albright, you're under arrest for hit and run resulting in injury, assault with a deadly weapon, and filing a false police report." As they read Constance her rights, Olivia reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. Tears streamed down her face, but they were different now, relief, not fear. "I was starting to think no one would believe me," she whispered. I kissed her forehead. "The truth has a way of coming out, sweetheart." What we didn't realize then was that this was just the beginning. As Constance was escorted from the hospital in handcuffs, her carefully constructed facade was crumbling throughout the community, unleashing years of secrets she'd fought to keep buried. News travels fast in small communities. By evening, Olivia's hospital room had transformed into something between a command center and a town hall meeting. The flowers arrived first, daisies from the Jensens next door, sunflowers from Charles Collins, roses from Dr. Robert Rivera across the street. Then came the visitors, neighbors I barely knew, each with their own constant story. Frank Miller, a retired Marine Corps colonel from 2 doors down, was first to arrive. At 67, with military posture and a handshake like iron, he wasn't the kind of man who showed emotion easily. Yet his voice shook slightly as he described what had happened 6 months earlier. "I questioned where the funds for our Veterans Memorial maintenance had gone during an HOA meeting," he explained, sitting rigidly in the visitor's chair. "The next morning, I found deep scratches along both sides of my truck. Thought it might be kids until I checked my garage camera. He pulled out his phone, showing us footage of Constance methodically keying his Ford F-150 at 2 a.m., her face clearly illuminated by the motion sensor lights. Never showed anyone this, he admitted. She threatened to have my disability accommodation, my wheelchair ramp, removed if I made trouble. Claimed it was installed 2 inches wider than approved. The Jensens arrived next, Michael and Sarah, with their teenage son, Tyler. Sarah had brought homemade cookies and righteous indignation. Constance threatened Tyler last summer for using our driveway basketball hoop after permitted hours, Sarah explained while her husband nodded grimly. She actually called the police, claiming he was disturbing the peace at 7:30 p.m. on a Saturday. Tyler, a lanky high school sophomore, pulled up a video on his phone. I started recording all our interactions after that, he explained. The screen showed Constance standing in their driveway, finger jabbing the air as she berated the boy. If you bounce that ball one more time, I'll have your father's business vehicle banned from this neighborhood permanently. Constance's voice rang clearly through the phone speaker. Don't test me, boy. I can make things very difficult for your family. Dr. Rivera, our neighbor from across the street, arrived still wearing scrubs from his hospital shift. The pediatrician's usual warm smile was replaced with a grim expression. I have documentation of Constance entering backyards to photograph violations without permission, he said, handing me a USB drive. My security system caught her in our yard, measuring the height of our children's playset with a tape measure while we were on vacation. When we returned, we had a $250 fine for excessive recreational equipment visibility. As evening turned to night, Olivia drifted in and out of sleep while I collected statement after statement, contact information, and evidence. The pattern was always the same. Constance would identify a target, usually someone who questioned her authority or the HOA finances, then escalate from citations to threats to actual property damage. Most shocking was the arrival of Patricia Jenkins, Constance's former HOA assistant. A nervous woman in her early 60s who kept checking the hallway as if afraid Constance might appear. I resigned last year after I found irregularities in the books, she whispered, sliding a folder across Olivia's meal tray. Constance has been forging board members' signatures on financial documents for years. When I questioned a $12,000 withdrawal for landscape emergency repairs that never happened, she threatened to reveal private medical information about my husband she'd obtained from HOA insurance records. Inside the folder were photocopies of HOA financial statements showing discrepancies dating back years, checks made out to vendors who didn't exist, invoices for services never performed, and a separate banking account I'd never seen mentioned in any HOA meetings. There's at least $275,000 unaccounted for, Patricia Jenkins explained. I was too afraid to come forward alone, but after what she did to your wife, this has to stop. By midnight, 14 neighbors had visited, each with their own evidence against Constance. The community hadn't just been intimidated, they'd been waiting for someone to finally stand up, to break the spell of fear she'd cast over Greenwood Estates. As the last visitors left, Sergeant Benson returned, looking both exhausted and energized. Mr. Richardson, we've never seen anything like this, he admitted. We've got enough witness statements to keep the prosecutor busy for months, but there's something else, something bigger. The district attorney wants to meet with you tomorrow. The following morning brought 2 significant developments. First, Dr. Patel confirmed that the medication had successfully stopped Olivia's contractions. Our baby girl's heart rate had stabilized. And while Olivia would need to remain under observation for another day, the immediate danger had passed. The second development arrived in the form of District Attorney Laura Martinez, no relation to Officer Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a reputation for pursuing public corruption cases aggressively. Mr. Richardson, she began after introducing herself. What started as an assault case has opened the door to something much larger. She explained that based on the financial documents Patricia Jenkins had provided, They'd obtained emergency warrants to examine the HOA's banking records, Constance's personal accounts, and her home computer. Constance Albright was arrested for hitting your wife, but we're now adding multiple felony charges of embezzlement, fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of funds, the DA explained. Forensic accountants have already identified $275,000 embezzled from HOA funds over 8 years, possibly more as we dig deeper. She showed me a preliminary report detailing how Constance had systematically siphoned money from community funds, creating fake vendors, inflating legitimate invoices, and, in some cases, simply transferring money directly to shell companies she controlled. The money that should have repaired neighborhood roads, updated the playground, and maintained common areas instead funded her country club membership at Lakeside Golf and Country Club, payments on her Lexus SUV, and a timeshare in Maui she visited 3 times annually. DA Martinez continued, I remembered how Constance had repeatedly delayed repairs to our neighborhood playground, claiming budget constraints, while children played on rusting equipment. How she'd rejected proposals for road repairs year after year while driving her luxury SUV over the same potholes the rest of us navigated daily. Her obsession with control wasn't about community standards or property values, the DA said, echoing my thoughts. It was about keeping everyone too intimidated to question her authority or examine financial records she controlled. Anyone who came close to discovering the fraud became a target for her harassment. The court had already frozen Constance's assets, including the SUV that struck Olivia, which would eventually be auctioned to help repay the community fund. Her home, a sprawling colonial that I'd always assumed she could afford from her late husband's insurance, had been purchased largely with embezzled funds and would likely be seized as well. I've prosecuted embezzlement cases before, DA Martinez said, closing her folder, but I've never seen one where the perpetrator was willing to commit violent crimes to cover their financial ones. Constance Albright isn't just a thief, she's a danger to society. That afternoon, our hospital room television showed Constance's arraignment. The woman who had terrorized our neighborhood for years appeared small and diminished in her orange jumpsuit, her carefully maintained appearance now stripped away. Bail was denied due to the violent nature of her attack on Olivia and the substantial flight risk her financial resources presented. By evening, local news stations were running the story, HOA president arrested for assault and massive fraud. Our security camera footage, with Olivia's face blurred for privacy, played on screens throughout the region. Neighbors we hadn't yet met began calling, offering additional evidence of Constance's misconduct and expressing relief that her reign had ended. I never thought it would take something so terrible to bring the truth to light, Olivia said as we watched the coverage together. All those years of her terrorizing people, and it took her actually hitting someone with her car. I held her hand, still trying to process everything that had happened. Some people think they're untouchable until they finally go too far. Today, 1 week later, Olivia and our baby girl are stable. The doctors say both will make a full recovery. After everything I've lost and rebuilt in my life, this second chance at family is my whole world, and I almost lost it to someone drunk on power and greed. Our community has rallied in ways I never imagined possible. A transparent new HOA board has been established, with term limits, monthly open meetings, and quarterly financial reviews. The playground equipment will be replaced next month, and road repairs begin next week, using funds recovered from Constance's assets. Constance faces up to 15 years in prison for the combined charges of assault, hit and run, and financial crimes. She'll never hold a position of trust again. The smirk is gone, replaced by the hollow-eyed stare of someone finally facing consequences. For all you men who've worked hard to build something worth protecting, install those security cameras, know your rights, and never back down from standing up for your family. One camera changed everything for us and freed an entire neighborhood from years of fear and corruption. Because one person with courage becomes an army when the truth is on their side. And sometimes, the family you fight for becomes bigger than you ever imagined. Our daughter will be born into a community healed by standing together against someone who thought power meant never having to answer for your actions. That's a lesson worth learning before you even take your first breath.